to any extent as to whether other markets follow that model. I mean, it's perfectly sensible because it keeps the options open for the clinicians to use other technologies, but maybe at a lower level. So you get one that's dominant, but it doesn't close out the others because they may come with something slightly, it may have a slightly different immune profile. So if one patient can't take that particular biosimilar, they may just be able to manage the disease on one of the others. And now that's that's in the very, very low percentages, but that's kind of the approach the UK takes. And the other part of that is, if one supplier has a difficulty in supplying, then you've still got the others in the frame and you can use them.
Okay. That's very helpful, because one thing that we'd heard on some of the Nordics, and I think this is particularly true of the Roche drug Rituxan, was that the Nordics actually paid for some of the studies and then kind of en masse adopted the biosimilar, but they asked for a huge price cut. Would that be something you were familiar with, that kind of dynamic, or not really?
I've heard that they were involved in the trials. I hadn't heard that it was linked to a price cut, but that bargaining power is something which state-sponsored health services do tend to try and exercise. They're all out to get the best deal, and they'll use whatever leverage they had. And the UK tends to just use market forces to an extent. I mean, there's lots of other dynamics in the UK, and I could talk ad nauseum about them, but let's stay focused.
Okay. One other element, as you mentioned earlier, is that biosimilars are not like generics. They have a cost to develop, and so the price can't fall too much. So one thing we've been wondering about, and I don't know if you've seen much evidence, is that in the case of generics, the price can fall like 95%, and so the originator just leaves the market. There's no point. But in this case, because there needs to be a decent margin for the biosimilars, if you're an originator and you already have got a lot of sunk costs, you've been making this drug for a long time, you could probably compete quite effectively if you cut your price enough. And I think we've seen Roche do that on a couple of their drugs, so they don't lose complete market share. I just wondered how would that fit into the system where the government kind of says you should go with biosimilars, but if the original is cutting price too, whether that might lead to an iterative process. I just wondered if you've got seen the experience of that yet, or is it too early?
I think it's probably too early, but I do. The tendency is for the brand prices to go down as well. An alternative strategy, and I don't think it's actually been used in biosimilars yet, is to keep the brand price high, but also produce of the same thing. I mean, you see that in some standard drugs. I think sildenafil was one where the brand price was kept high, and a generic was produced to compete in both markets by the brand owner. Now, whether that model is going to be followed in biosimilars remains to be seen. I mean, there's potential there, and the advantage of a manufacturer might get is that a high-profile brand, for example, like Herceptin, might be used in the private market at list price, whereas for the main body health service, then you might be saying, okay, we use the biosimilar. And then you want to be competing in the biosimilar market as well. So that's an alternative strategy, but price reduction does happen. And the strategies to protect your product as loss of exclusivity approaches is to look at other ways of delivery. So a lot of the biologics are delivered by IV infusion. Now you extend your product life by sort of trying to make it